Have you ever wondered what happens when, like, a mind that can, unravel the deepest secrets of the universe, um, like finds itself trapped inside, like, its own labyrinth?
Yeah, it's a haunting question, isn't it?
Yeah, and welcome to the deep dive, where today we're going to dive deep into the parallel but contrasting lives of two, extraordinary 20th century mathematical thinkers.
Yeah.
Vashishtha Narayan Singh from India and John Forbes Nash Jr. from the United
So
States.
this is not just like a simple biography of two brilliant minds.
Right.
It's more like an exploration of what happens when you have this like intersection of, just raw intellectual power and profound challenges of mental illness.
Right.
And what's really fascinating is how the presence or absence of strong support systems can really dramatically change a person's life.
Absolutely.
So we're going beyond just like the facts and figures of their lives, and we're really looking at the human cost when genius and mental health collide.
Right. And I think what's really interesting is they both, Singh and Nash were both mathematical prodigies.
Yeah.
And incredibly, they both struggled with schizophrenia.
Right.
But their stories are very different.
Yeah.
As we'll see, Nash's story is familiar to many through the popular film A Beautiful Mind.
Right.
But Singh's story and his contributions and his struggles are largely unknown.
Yeah.
So today, we really want to explore what led these two brilliant individuals down such divergent paths, even as they both navigated groundbreaking, mathematical thought and these really serious mental health challenges.
Definitely.
So we're going to look at their lives chronologically, starting with the very first, sparks of their genius to the later trials and, everything in between.
Yeah, let's start with those early years then, the 1920s and the 40s, which really set the stage for the emergence of these two, remarkable figures.
Okay, so John Forbes Nash Jr. was born on June 13, 1928, in Bluefield, West Virginia.
Right.
His father was an electrical engineer, and from a young age, Nash showed like this unusual ability to solve these complex problems on his own. He was more interested in his own explorations than in traditional classroom learning.
Right.
Which maybe suggests that independent intellect that he had.
Yeah. And on the other side of the world, Vashishtha Narayan Singh was born on April 2nd, 1942, in a rural village in Bihar, India.
Wow.
Now, even though they came from completely different backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
What they shared was this exceptional mathematical talent, which became evident really early on. His teachers were just amazed by his ability to solve equations that were way beyond his age.
Wow.
It's like he had this innate understanding of math.
It's like he was born with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So as we move into the 1950s, we see those initial sparks of their talent turn into something really extraordinary.
Right.
For Nash, a pivotal moment was when he went to Princeton University in 1950.
Okay.
He was only 22
Wow.
to get his PhD, and this is where he started to develop his groundbreaking work.
I see.
His doctoral thesis, which was called Non-Cooperative Games,
Okay.
which he finished in 1950, was absolutely revolutionary. It basically provided a mathematical framework for understanding situations where individuals make strategic decisions without collaborating directly.
Oh, wow.
You can think of it like the foundation for analyzing things like economic markets or political negotiations.
I see.
This work fundamentally changed the way we think about strategic interactions, and it earned him the Nobel Prize later on.
Wow. So while Nash was making these strides at Princeton, Singh was gaining recognition as a child prodigy in India during that same decade.
Exactly.
And his time at Patna Science College really solidified that reputation.
Right. And there's this incredible anecdote about Singh correcting errors in his professor's work.
What?
Like, can you imagine?
Yeah, really?
It highlights his amazing intuition and skill in math, even at that young age.
Wow.
I mean, here's India with a living mathematical genius.
Right.
But it seems, from what we know, that the educational system and scientific infrastructure at that time in India weren't really ready to support such exceptional talent.
Wow. So both of them are really hitting these like high points, in the 1960s in their mathematical careers. But tragically, it's also the start of, a really tough personal journey for one of them.
Exactly. For Nash, 1961 was a turning point in a very difficult way.
Right.
At the height of his intellectual powers, the first signs of schizophrenia started to appear.
Oh, wow.
The hallucinations, the erratic behavior, the paranoia. It's such a sad irony that this debilitating illness took hold just when his mind was at its peak.
It's like the peak of his, genius and then this terrible illness.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that same year, Singh finishes his master's degree in mathematics from Patna University.
Wow.
and continues to impress everyone with his incredible understanding of math. And then in 1963, he gets this incredible opportunity. He's admitted to UC Berkeley.
Wow.
And he goes on to do some really complex work in mathematics, specifically on reproducing kernels and operators,
Right.
under the guidance of this well-known mathematician, John L. Kelly.
It's really interesting to see how their intellectual pursuits were so parallel,
Right.
even though they were separated by such vast distances and such different cultural and academic environments.
Right.
Both Nash and Singh were pushing the boundaries of mathematical understanding during this period.
Right. And it's interesting because Singh's talent didn't go completely unnoticed,
Yeah.
Internationally.
That's right.
It's been said that he was involved with NASA's Apollo space missions,
Oh, wow.
using his mathematical genius for all those complex calculations required for space travel.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing to think about his mind contributing to, one of humanity's biggest achievements.
It is.
Stepping into space.
Yeah. But within his own country, it seems that he wasn't getting the same level of recognition or support
Right.
that you might expect for someone with such incredible abilities.
Yeah, and it's, the 1970s bring profound personal connections and hardship for both of them.
Yes.
But again, with very different long-term outcomes.
Yeah. In 1966, Nash married Alicia Larde, who was a physics student.
Okay.
And their relationship was truly remarkable.
Mm.
Alicia's love and support for Nash never wavered, even as his mental health challenges became more and more difficult.
Wow.
That partnership was absolutely crucial for him to be able to navigate his illness in the years that followed.
Right, and Singh returned to India in 1971 after completing his PhD.
Okay.
And he married Vandana Rani.
Hmm.
But tragically, their relationship didn't last.
Oh.
And his wife left him just a few years later, unable to cope with the increasing difficulties of his schizophrenia.
It's so sad. It was such a devastating turning point for Singh.
Yeah.
The breakdown of his marriage, along with his worsening mental health, led to him becoming more and more isolated.
Right.
And he lost that critical support system that he really needed.
It's heartbreaking to think about him going through all of that without a proper network of care.
It is.
Especially when you contrast that with Nash, who had Alicia as this constant source of support and stability.
Yeah.
They were both fighting these really tough internal battles. But the difference in their support systems was huge.
It's striking.
Nash had this lifeline, and Singh, sadly, did not.
Yeah, as we move into the 80s and 90s, we see their stories diverge even further. For Nash, this was a time of slow and gradual, but ultimately significant recovery.
Wow.
After years of struggling with his illness and being hospitalized, he started to find ways to manage his condition.
Wow.
And amazingly, he began to regain control of his mind by the late 1980s.
That's incredible. But for Singh, it was a very different story.
Yeah.
Unlike Nash, who had Alicia's constant support, Singh didn't have that.
Right.
And it's sad to see from the sources that his family, academic institutions, even the Indian government, they kind of lost touch with him during this time.
It really makes you think, for almost 20 years, this brilliant mind was living in obscurity.
It's hard to believe.
Struggling with mental illness and poverty, often wandering the streets of Bihar.
It's like the world just moved on without him.
Yeah, and he was forgotten.
Right.
Stuff his incredible talent.
Yeah. But then as we enter the 2000s, we see a glimmer of hope with renewed recognition for both of them.
Yes, but again, with vastly different outcomes.
Right.
In 1994, Nash's groundbreaking work in game theory was finally recognized with a Nobel Prize in economics.
Wow.
This was a turning point in his life.
Yeah.
It brought him back into the spotlight and showed how impactful his work had been decades earlier.
Yeah. And in 2011, there was this rediscovery of Singh in India.
Right.
And he received some belated recognition.
Yeah.
But sadly, by this time, it was too late to make a real difference in his life.
That's right.
His physical and mental health had deteriorated, and the years of struggle had taken a toll.
Yeah. And then tragically in 2015, Nash and his wife Alicia died in a car accident, just as he was experiencing this resurgence of appreciation for his work and his life.
It's so sad.
It was a bittersweet end to his journey. He had found his way back to recognition only to have it cut short so suddenly.
Yeah, and then in 2019, Vashishtha Narayan Singh passed away in a hospital in Patna. And it's so striking to contrast his death with Nash's.
Right?
Nash's death was reported all over the world and mourned internationally.
Yeah.
But Singh's death received very little national attention.
It highlights the different levels of recognition and value they were given, both during their lives and in death.
It really does.
Their stories, while different, offer us some really important and, I think, sobering lessons.
Definitely.
Biggest contrast is in their support systems.
Right.
Both were undeniably brilliant and both struggled with schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But Nash had that crucial network, his dedicated wife, the academic community that recognized his early work, and eventually wider public acknowledgement.
Right.
But Singh was largely left alone to face his struggles.
And that leads us to the first key takeaway, which is that just being a genius isn't enough.
Right.
To have a fulfilling or stable life when facing serious mental health challenges.
Exactly. It seems like Singh had the potential to be India's Nash.
Yeah.
But the lack of consistent and comprehensive support really hindered his potential and sadly contributed to his decline.
It's so sad. The second takeaway, I think, is how crucial it is to have accessible and comprehensive mental health support and early intervention.
Absolutely.
I mean, it makes you wonder how different Singh's life might have been if he had received the right resources, timely medical care, and a supportive environment in India
It really is.
from the beginning of his illness.
Yeah.
You know, it raises this important question about a nation's responsibility to its intellectual heroes.
That's right.
You know, the U.S., despite all the challenges Nash faced, ultimately provided him with a framework through his personal support network and the recognition of his work
Yeah.
that helped him recover and return to a prominent position.
Yeah.
But India, it seems, failed to do that for Singh.
It's like the later recognition, while maybe well-intentioned, was more of a symbolic gesture
Right.
than the kind of sustained support he needed for real rehabilitation and a better quality of life.
You know, and the source material ends with that statement. One became a Nobel laureate and a legend, the other a forgotten genius. It really makes you think.
It does.
It really does.
It challenges us to ask ourselves, have we really learned from stories like Vashishtha Narayan Singh's?
Right.
Are we doing enough to build systems that support and nurture brilliant minds, especially when they're facing mental health challenges?
Right.
Or are we going to keep letting potential geniuses slip away, their contributions lost and forgotten?
This deep dive into the lives of John Nash and Vashishtha Narayan Singh has given us so much more than just a comparison of their lives.
Yeah.
It shows how crucial support systems and societal responsibility are in shaping the destinies of even the most gifted individuals.
It really does.
You know, it highlights the importance of the safety nets we create or fail to create.
Right.
For those who have extraordinary intellectual gifts but also face extraordinary challenges.
That's a powerful message.
We encourage you to think about the state of mental health support.
Yeah.
Not just for those with recognized brilliance. Right.
But for everyone in our communities and around the world.
Yeah. Are we doing enough to provide the care and support that people need?
It's a question we should all be asking.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us on this really thought-provoking deep dive.